Hi everyone. So in the previous video we did a quick setup for our project where we are building a project for where we can chat with our PDF. So in the previous video we got all the keys and we have updated our environment variables in the .env file. Now in this video we will write our first API, which is for the file upload. So I'll just go inside pages, inside API, and then over here I'll create a file upload.js. Now I'll just copy this. Okay, so now in this you will be this API will be called when the user will upload a PDF. So when it is an upload, we want it to be a post call. So I'll just first write down all the comments and all the steps that we will be coding. So first is of course only allow post methods, and next is once we have checked that it's post method, then we will connect to MongoDB. So over here, as you remember, in the previous video we did a MongoDB cluster setup, so we will be connecting to the MongoDB cluster. Now once the connection is successful, we will parse the incoming form data, which will have the file attached. So we will parse it and we will get the file out, and then the next is we will upload the file to AWS S3. So in the previous video again we created a bucket, and so we will be uploading our file to that same bucket. Now once the file is uploaded, we will initialize Pinecone. So Pinecone is a vector database, and by initializing we will be like connecting to the Pinecone database, so with the environment and the key. So initialize Pinecone. Okay, so the next step is once the Pinecone is initialized, we will have to create an index. Now index in Pinecone means it's very similar to tables or collections in SQL or NoSQL databases. So we can just relate it to something like a creation of a table kind of a thing. So over here, but over here we call it as index in vector database in Pinecone. So once the Pinecone is initialized, we will create Pinecone index. Okay, so once the index is created, the index creation actually takes time, so we will give the command, but it takes around 1 minute to kind of to complete. But we can return our response to the user so that the user does not have to wait for that long. So but in the Pinecone server, the index creation would continue for I think almost a minute. For almost a minute it continues. Now once all these things are done, we will save the details of the file details in MongoDB. So the details of the file is something like the file name, then file URL where the file is, the S3 URL. Then we will save the index so that we can come back and the user can switch between the files, and the user can get the index, and then the user can continue with their questions, something like that. And once all this is done, then we will finally we will return the response. So we have all our steps. Now the thing is, before writing this function, this route, what we will do is we will write the database connections, other functions which we'll be using here. Like the first one is connecting to MongoDB. So we'll write a function db.js, and we'll put it somewhere inside. We'll create a source file. In here we'll create, it depends, wherever you want you can create it. So over here I'll create maybe I'll just create it now. Normally, like in Express and all, we follow something like this. So I'll create models where we will write our schema. Then over here I'll create a file inside src, it is db.js. In this we will write our code for connecting to database MongoDB. I'll create one more file. We'll be using it just in 2 minutes. That is pinecone.js. Using this we will initialize Pinecone. We'll write a function to initialize Pinecone. Then we'll write another function which is for S3 services. We'll write the functions to upload the file to S3 in this file. And yeah, so coming back to database.js. Now in database.js we will be writing the functions to connect to the database. So we'll just quickly import mongoose. Okay, sync function. Maybe I'll just keep on waiting. Just in case there is no connection available, then we will connect to a cluster Mongo. Now in here we copied the string, so we'll just copy and paste it here. Yeah, so we will just paste the string here, and the password will come from the environment variable, so it will be process.env.db password. And okay, and yeah, the username also we can keep, because if we are using multiple environments, so yeah, so dot db username. Okay, so Mongo URI is ready now, because we will be connecting to our paperbot database. So after .NET / we can give the name of our database. So again, it's up to you. You want to hard code it, or you can put this also in the environment variables. Okay, so this is now we'll try to connect. This is just in case if there is no existing connection available. So try catch. Okay, in here wait mongoose dot connect mongo URI. Use new URI URL parser is true, and use unified apology true. And yeah, so if there's no exception in this, we can assume that the database is connected, so we can just say connected to MongoDB, so that's fine. The next thing is, if it is not connected, I mean if there is some exception, so we can just say console.log. Sorry, we'll go with error. It's up to you. Error connecting to MongoDB. Fine, so our connect to database function is ready. We can also create a function to disconnect from the database. Let's say disconnect db, and we'll just check if mongoose.connections not ready state. If there is an active connection, we'll just wait for, just say mongoose.disconnect, and then we can just maybe console log MongoDB disconnected. So this is fine. Our functions are ready. Another thing is we can just export both of them, and we'll just keep them as named exports. So I'll just say export db. Fine. So our db.js file is complete. Now because we will be inside the upload.js, we'll also be using S3 and Pinecone, so we'll quickly write the functions in those files as well, so that we can directly use them once we start writing the API route. So in here we'll say import within the Pinecone. So we just will install the Pinecone client. So from Pinecone client we'll import Pinecone client. Then one is const Pinecone is equal to new Pinecone client, and we'll create a function for initialize. So export const initialize, and we'll make it an async function. Now in this we'll say await Pinecone dot init, and then in the init we will pass the environment, and this environment comes from process dot env dot Pinecone db / environment. Similarly, the API key we have to provide, so that we can again provide from pdb key. Okay, fine. So our initialize function is complete. Now we will be this is already being exported. We will default export Pinecone. So yeah, so our this file is also complete. Next is regarding S3. So in S3 we will be using for saving our files. So we will use the AWS SDK package that we installed. So we'll say import AWS from import, and we'll say import fs from fs. Now say const s3 is equal to new aws dot s3. Now in this we will be passing the in this we have to pass the access key ID, which will come from process.env.aws. We can go back actually to the this is our access key. Okay, and we have to give the secret access key, and again that comes from process.env.aws access key, and we have to give the region. So region, it depends. In whichever region you have created the bucket, you can give that region. So for me it is AP-south-1. Fine. So now we will this is just for creating the S3 object. Now we will be using it in our export in our upload of the file. So we'll say export const, let's say we name this function as S3 upload. We'll keep it async so that we can use wait inside, and then we'll say const params. Now const params is basically we will be these are parameters that will pass in the upload when we will upload. So it should have the bucket. So now so when we will do the S3 upload, we will pass the bucket and the file, because we can use this same function for other buckets as well. So that's why I did not hard code it here. So we can say bucket and the key. So the key is basically nothing but the file name. So I'm already passing the file object. So from there we'll get the file name and the body. So for the body we have to create a read stream for our file.path. So the file is basically the file object that is passed from the front end. Same file object will pass to this S3 upload function, and then we can give it like this create read stream file.path. Now in order to return, because once it is uploaded, S3 returns a data object which has the URL for our uploaded file. So we'll just say s3.upload, and then this will pass the params. We just created this params, and then .promise, so that we can use await. Otherwise we can still use it using .then by chaining. Fine. So these are done. I mean, for now we don't need OpenAI for now, at least for upload. So I think we are good to start writing the upload route. So I'll just one second. Okay, so let's start writing the upload function, upload route. So in this we just have to first check whether the HTTP request that has come is post or not. It has to be post, otherwise we'll not take the request. We'll just return it, we'll reject it. So if request.method is not equal to post, so we'll just say return rest.status. I'll just say 400 and send they're not allowed, or instead of sending we can maybe send JSON, and inside this we can say message. Okay, so this is what we will return if the method is not allowed. Otherwise we'll go ahead and we'll try to connect to the MongoDB and do the rest of the things. So we'll just put everything inside the catch block, try catch block, and inside the let's put it inside. From over here we will just I'll just make it async, and over here we'll just try to connect to MongoDB, and this is fine. I'll in fact put all these comments inside the try, because everything has to sit inside. Okay, now once it is connected to the MongoDB database, we will not get any exceptions, so we can proceed further, and then we will try to parse the incoming file. So we'll just we'll be basically parsing the form. So we'll be using formidable here. So new dot formidable dot incoming form. Now this formidable we have already installed this package, so this is fine. Now we will be parsing the form from the request. So in order to do that, we'll just say form dot parse. Now in the form dot parse we have to pass the request object, because the file that we will be sending will be in the request. And then once it is parsed, so it will return either an error or fields or files. So if there is an error, so we'll say if error, so we'll just say return status maybe 500 .json message failed to parse the form data. So this is fine. If needed, maybe we can maybe console it as well. Fine. Now the thing is, if there is no error in the parsing, I'll put everything in here because we are inside the parsing. So once the request is parsed and there is no exception till this point, there is no error in this point, so we'll say const file is equal to files.file. Now this files comes from here, files.file. Now we'll see if the file object exists. So if not equal to file, so we can again return rest dot status 400 and just say message no file uploaded. Okay, now the thing is we know that the file is there, so we will just upload it to S3. So let's say let data equals, so wait, S3 upload. Okay, so because S3 will return a data object, so we are capturing it in data. Now in order to upload to S3, we need to pass two functions. One was bucket and another was the file object. So our bucket is coming from environment dot S3 bucket. Okay, and we will be passing the file object. So yeah, so this is fine. So once I'll put it here. Now once the file is uploaded to S3, what we need to do is we need to initialize Pinecone. For Pinecone initialization, we have already written a function, so we will use it. But before that, I think what we can do is we can extract the file name, and what we'll do is, in order to initialize and create an index in Pinecone, we need an index. We have to create an index that has to be some kind of a string. So we'll create a string with the file name, slugified file name. So we'll say let the file name, we'll get the file name, so it's like file dot name, and we'll remove the extension, so we'll just say split, and once it is split, we'll just take the first part. So there are actually better ways to do this, like we can use regular expression, but just to be quick, I'm just using it this way. And yeah, and the next thing is we'll create a slug. So let's say file slug, and we will use slugify, and in slugify we will give the file name, and maybe we can, instead of file name, we can say file name no extension, just to be clear that it has no extension. And yeah, so we want the slug to have lower cases, and we'll use strict so that it does not have any special characters, because it might then get rejected in Pinecone. Okay, so the next thing is we need to initialize Pinecone, so we'll just say initialize, and we are importing it not from here. Initialize, we can no. Okay, I'll write it at the top. Import Pinecone and initialize from c/pinecone. Fine. So now it's a function, so we will run it. And once it is initialized, the next step is to create an index. Now to create an index, we have already created. Oh no, we have not created. We have to write a function to create an index. So what we'll do is we'll just I'll just put one function here, create an index, and then I'll pass the file name slug, because that's what we will be using. Okay, and I will just write a function for create index. Now once the index is created, if there are no issues, so next what we have to do is we have to create an entry in our MongoDB database. So we'll say const my file is equal to new my file model, and we'll have file name, file dot name, we'll have file URL, we'll say data the object that we got back from S3, and then the index for the vector database we'll call it a vector index, and then that will be the file name slug. Now I have not written create index, and I have not created my file model. I'll do it just in a moment. So once it's done, we will be saving a file, my file.save, and if everything is fine, then we will return this status to 100 .json file upload to S3. We'll just say message and index created. Okay, so everything goes fine. This is what we will be doing, and if there is some error, we'll just say console.log. Yeah, maybe we'll just put the whole, and we will return rest.status maybe 500, and JSON we will return message message. So our API route is done. The only two things remaining is first is the create index function. So let's write the create index function. So maybe I'll first write it here, and we'll see if we can move it to the Pinecone JS file. So I'll just say create index, and we'll create it as an async function. Yeah, so when we create an index in Pinecone database, we will first check if there is any index with the same name already in the database. So we'll just say indexes pinecone.list indexes. So there are a lot of functions that Pinecone provides. Maybe once I complete the whole project in the last video, maybe I'll go through a lot of functions that the Pinecone provides. Now the thing is, if I will get all the list of indexes, and then we'll see indexes.includes index, we will pass the index name when we will create the index. So we'll just say index.includes index name. Then in that case, I mean, if it does not include, then in that case we'll say pinecone.create index. And then now in the create index, what we have to do is when we create the index, we have to pass create request object. Now don't worry, this is nothing but the exact syntax what the documentation tells us. So in the pinecone.create index, and we have to pass a create request object. Now in the create request object, we have to provide the name of the index, which we already have, which is index name. That's what we passed. And then we should pass the dimension of this index. The dimension is the length of the vector returned from OpenAI, which is 1536. We already saw in our first video that OpenAI returns 1536 items in a list in the embeddings. So that's what we have to hardcode here. But it depends on model to model. There are models that they have a dimension of less than 1536. So depending upon the model you're working on, embedding model, you have to put the dimension. So over here we'll just, if there is any exception, so we'll just say I'll just throw a new error saying index with name, let this name already exists. Okay, so our create index is done. Now the last part that is pending is my file model. So I remember we created a models folder, but we did not create the schema, so I'll quickly create it now. So the name of our model will be the name of our file will keep it as my file, and okay, my file. Now in here we will import mongoose, and then we'll say const schema is equal to mongoose dot schema. Then we will write our schema. My file is the name of the collection that we want, so we'll say my file schema. And then over here we have new schema, so we'll write all the fields that we want, like we want field name, then file name, then we want because in the file name we will be saving the original file name the user uploaded, then file URL, the URL that is returned from S3, so that we can use it. Now if the file is processed or it's not processed, so it will be a boolean. Then we'll have a vector index field, which will be basically which will hold the index of the Pinecone. Now we will have timestamps. This is true, and what we'll do is we want my file const my file model is equal to mongoose dot models dot my file, if there is any file. Otherwise we will create a new schema. If there is no such model, then the next part of the OR will run, model, where we will give the name my file, and it will be my file schema. So mongoose.models my file, this will this is something that we don't do if we are using Express, because in that the all these are connections. The schema is created only once, but in serverless it works a little differently, so it will try to recreate the schema and it will give us an error. That's why we will check first if this schema is already created. If we already have a collection, then we will not recreate it, we'll just use it. Otherwise we will create it, and then in the end we will export default my file model, so which we just create. Now we'll quickly give the type. It has to be string. Okay, then required, it is a required field, so we'll say true. Now we can give some error message, my name is required, and then we can maybe, if you want, we can give a max length maybe of 100 characters, and then unique, we want it to be unique, so it is true. Similarly for the file URL, we can maybe reuse all these values. We want it to be string, and we'll say file is required, unique, true, and everything. That's fine. Now is processed is going to be of type boolean. Okay, and the default will be false. So as soon as the file is uploaded, it will be false. We'll keep it false. Next is the vector index. We'll keep it as string. We can again give it a max length of 100. Unique, again, it has to be unique, so unique is true. And required, for now we'll just keep it false. We'll see. Okay, so our model is complete, our upload function is complete. Over here I did not import it, I'll just import it here. Okay, so there's some issue, I'll just okay, so we have, so our upload API is complete. Now we will in the next video we will see how to write the process file API. Thank you.